So today's video is going to be another installment in would I buy these palettes if they were coming out now. I have 10 palettes to talk about with you guys that I pulled from my collection, and I'm gonna just share my thoughts on whether or not I would be getting these palettes and if they would spark my interest enough if they were coming out now to pick them up. So I only have 3 ColourPop palettes in this stack. Actually, wait, I have 4, and then the rest are not ColourPop. So let's start out with a ColourPop palette. And the first one is the Disney and Winnie the Pooh ColourPop Sweet as Can Be eyeshadow palette. I actually just randomly picked this palette out now because I did originally pick 2 palettes from one brand, but one of them was a Christmas palette, and I'm like, a Christmas palette would not be coming out now. So I decided to switch it up and just pick out another palette at random. Honestly, like, Christmas palettes, like, even if they were theoretically coming out, they wouldn't be coming out until like November or December anyway, or like October through December. So I decided to pick out this palette instead because this would be coming out during this time because it is a spring themed palette. Obviously, like, Winnie the Pooh is all about like spring and summertime, and this is a very spring color story, and I would be telling you guys right now I would 100% be picking this up because I think that the color story is really cute. The quality is really good in this one. And I did use this palette quite a bit last year during spring. It's just such an easy spring palette to use, and I really like the color story. There are a couple of things I probably would change about this palette because I don't think this muted pink was absolutely necessary. This is honestly the only matte that I've never used in this palette. I think the rest of the matte shades make perfect sense, like the yellow and the mid-tone brown, the orange, the deeper brown, and the reddish brown. They're really good shades, really good shade selection, but this one I probably would have made like an olivey green just to go with the green shimmers a little bit better. But these mattes go beautifully with these shimmers that you can create really pretty looks with them. But the shimmers are beautiful in here, but that's the only thing I would change. But this one's mostly a packaging thing. I absolutely love the packaging of this palette. I love that it's in a 10-pan format. They don't really do this format too often, but I wish that they would come out with this format more often with like the Disney palettes because it is so freaking adorable and so aesthetically pleasing and so easy to store, and the design and everything on this palette is so freaking adorable. So this would strictly be a theming thing on why I would pick this palette up, but it is a really good palette as well, and I'm a sucker for the Disney releases, so whatever Disney release, oh my god, why am I coughing so much right now? Releases appeal to me, I'm gonna pick them up. Okay, next one is another ColourPop palette, and this one I've been using a ton. This is already a given, but this is the Not a Box of Chocolates palette, and if this palette was coming out now, I would 100% be picking this palette up because I really do like this palette. I've been using this palette a ton this year. It's one of my most reached for palettes in the last couple of months. Hold on. So I really like this palette. It's full of like deeper chocolatey mattes and beautiful shimmers. I don't want to talk about this palette too long because I rant and rave about this palette all the time. Because it's such a good palette. Really great quality from ColourPop. The Winnie the Pooh palette is just as good quality. And this would make perfect sense for them to launch at any time, to be honest. Because yes, it is a neutral palette. But also a lot of people really loved this palette. Okay, so I just sucked on a cough drop, so hopefully that'll help. Okay. So yes, I would be picking this palette up. I don't really have to go too involved in this palette because it's beautiful. I just wish that there was a little bit of a lighter tone than this one because it doesn't exactly work for the brow bone for me, but not every single palette is going to be catered to my fair skin, so I'm really glad that these tones are darker and a lot of different skin tones can use this. But there's such beautiful shimmers in here, and the mattes are just so good, and I love that there's so many mattes in here. There's at least, I think, 9 mattes. Yeah, so you really don't need to reach into any other palette to like deepen this up or get some definition. It's just a beautiful palette. I really love the palettes that come out in the 16 pan format from ColourPop. I wish that they would do this format more often because it's like ends up being my favorite. So I wish they would do the 16 pan format and the 10 pan format more, but this one would be a no-brainer. I would 100% be picking this palette up. So we're not doing that great so far, but whatever. Okay. Next up is the Haus Labs Love for Sale palette, and you actually can't get this palette anymore because she did rebrand her brand and it's now available in Sephora. But I just wanted to talk about whether or not I would be getting this. Let's pretend that this palette would be coming out with her new line. And yes, I would be getting this because I do collect the Haus Labs palettes because I am a huge Lady Gaga fan. I actually am very, very fond of her brand. I think her brand is really, really good. And she's been having nothing but positive reviews about her brand. I like this palette. I think the shimmers are beautiful. I actually prefer the shimmers over the matte selection in this palette. The matte selection is just a little bit weird to me because there's like these two like really warm tone like orangey neutral shades, and they don't really go with a lot of the shades in here except for this peach shimmer. So I don't really understand why they decided to put these two shades next to like these two purple shimmers, but the shimmers are super sparkly and beautiful. And I love that there's a matte brow bone highlight in here, and these deepening shades on the bottom are really good to deepen up a look. I just don't end up reaching for this palette that much. But the only reason why I would be getting this is because it's Haus Labs and because I love Lady Gaga. So I would be picking this up because I do collect her palettes. I have the first two that launched before this one as well. So yeah, that's mostly why I would be picking it up, even though I don't use it too often. But when I do use it, I really do like my look when I use this. It's a very natural glam, or a very like sophisticated glam, and I really love the packaging of this one. And I like that this formula is more so the formula that was in like the first little palette that she launched, and she looks gorgeous on the front. But yeah, I would be picking this up, definitely. Okay. Next up is a palette then I'm not sure that really would be coming out at this time, but you honestly can use this palette year-round anyway. So I'm just going to mention it, and it is one of the palettes I pulled randomly. So this is my one and only palette that I own from Unearthly Cosmetics. And I actually got this palette before they changed their name. They used to be called Alien Cosmetics. If you guys didn't know that, they did rebrand like I think almost 2 years ago at this point. I believe I picked up this palette last year, or maybe it was even the year before, but this is the Fall Magic palette by Unearthly Cosmetics. And yes, mine still says Alien Cosmetics on it because that's when I got it. So, and this is what the color story looks like. I absolutely love this palette. I love the quality. I love the shimmers in here. The mattes are so rich and easy to use. I use this palette a ton in the fall. And I try to use it as much as I can. I don't necessarily use it around this time, but honestly, I probably could because you guys know that I love pinks and greens for the springtime. And since there's like this muted green and this muted pink in here, it's a really good color selection. That again, you could be, oh my fucking God, I cannot today. I can't. Sorry. Like, I just get so frustrated sometimes. But yes, I would be picking this palette up as well. But I probably wouldn't pick it up right now. like, I don't know if in this fantasy scenario, can you like mull something over for a while and then pick it up when the season comes around? Or maybe like think about it and then like figure out whether or not you want to get it or not. So, but yes, I would be picking this palette up. Maybe not right away, but it's beautiful. And the shimmers are beautiful in here and the mattes just work beautifully. So, how many times can I say beautifully? I don't know, but I really like this palette. So, that would be a yes as well. Okay, number 5 is a ColourPop palette, and this is the Limoncello palette. And I probably would be picking up this palette now because this ended up becoming one of my favorite ColourPop palettes that I own. I almost couldn't get it open. But when this palette did come out originally, I didn't pick it up because I felt that I didn't really need it because I thought that the color story was pretty, but I loved the packaging, but I ended up skipping over it at the time just because I was like, I don't really need it. But honestly, this would make perfect sense coming out now. So I probably, yes, would be picking this up 100% because it's a beautiful palette and it ended up becoming one of my favorite ColourPop palettes I own. It's like in my top 10. And the shimmers in here are absolutely stunning and the mattes perform beautifully. I love doing like yellow looks with a pop of blue on the bottom. That was like my favorite look to do last summer and spring. So I'm excited to whip this palette out again during the spring and summertime. I really need to start using some of my spring and summer palettes. I really have just been testing out the same 3 palettes right now. Well, 2 palettes. I'm just wearing a neutral palette today, but I've been wearing this palette a lot. And I'm actually going to talk about it in this video too because I ended up pulling it. But yes, I would be picking this up because love the theming, love the shimmers, love the mattes, and this palette got a lot of positive reviews last year. So, or maybe it was 2021. Could have sworn this came out last year though, like last spring. I don't remember, but I ended up getting this free with an order, so I was really happy to try it then because it was free. That's the only reason why I ended up getting it was because I didn't have to pay for it, but yes, I would be picking this up, excuse me. Sorry, all these palettes I really, really love, so I don't know if I would be saying no to any of these palettes, to be honest. Okay, the next one, this might be the only one. Okay. So the next one is a palette from Melt, and this is the Melt Cosmetics The Waiting Room palette. Now, for this palette, honestly, with Melt, they release whatever they want whenever they want to. Like, they're not really like a super seasonal brand. So, like, this could be coming out now, and it would make sense because it's not just... I mean, Beetlejuice is considered a Halloween movie, but... it doesn't really need to be designated as a Halloween movie because this could just be coming out to celebrate the movie. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be designated as a Halloween release. The only reason I would be picking this up is because I love Beetlejuice and because I would want to get something from this collection. I did ponder this one for a little bit, but eventually I did end up picking it up. And it is a really good palette, but honestly, around this time, I probably wouldn't be getting this, but if it was limited edition, I probably would end up picking it up. So I would have to say yes to this one too, only because of the theming, and the formula in this palette is lovely. I really do like these mattes in here. They're super pigmented, and the shimmers are really pretty as well. And I used this palette quite a lot when I first got it, and it's a really good palette. So quality-wise, it's fantastic, and I really love the theming. So this might be the only palette I would be like on the fence about, but all these other palettes, I'm telling you, I would be picking up. So I'd probably say yes to this one too, but this would be the only one I would hesitate about a little bit. But I would have to say yes to that one too. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It is my collection, and these palettes are in my collection for a reason. So, I don't know why I'm apologizing. Okay. 4 more palettes. Let's hurry this up. Okay, next one is the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyquist Hella palette, and I would be 100% be picking this palette up as well. I guess I'd be having a lot of palettes to test out this month if these were all coming out at the same time. I really love this palette as well. This was coming out basically around this time last year anyway, so theoretically it'd be coming out at this time because I think it came out like mid-March, the end of March, because it's such a perfect spring color story, and like I've said before, y'all know my favorite spring colors to use are greens and pinks. So I would be 100% be picking this palette up. I love Odin's Eyes formula. I love Angelica Nyquist. And I really love this color story. And I've used this palette a lot. And I used it a ton last spring. So this would be a no-brainer. It's a beautiful palette. There's some beautiful shimmers in here. Some of them shift. This one's a multi-chrome. This one's a duochrome. I mean, and their matte formula is fantastic. So, and I do collect the Legendary Diversa series. This one ended up being the last one in the series, but I have the other 3 palettes as well. So, even if this one was coming out like a year later, which would be now, I would still be picking it up. So, yes, I would say yes to that one too. Okay, next up is a pretty controversial one, but this one is also by ColourPop, and this is the Harry Potter Back to Hogwarts palette. And the reason why I got this palette is because I really, really loved the theming. I loved the packaging. Harry Potter basically sparked my interest in reading as a kid. That's why this collection was a bit special to me. I do not support J.K. Rowling or anything that she talks about, but I really loved the color story of this, and I was really curious to try it. A lot of people were saying that this formula was some of the best that they've ever tried from ColourPop. They said that this formula was a bit different, and they feel like they really did something with this palette. So I ended up getting it, and this ended up being my favorite palette that I tried last year from any brand. Like, #1 ColourPop palette, #1 palette that I tried last year, because I kept on reaching for it. And I would be 100% be picking this up too, because I really do love this palette. It is a big palette, but you guys, I was constantly reaching into this palette. And I've used all the shimmers in this palette twice. And there's a lot of shimmers in here. There's like 10 shimmers in here. So I just love the pigmentation of the mattes. Every single matte is amazing. Not one dud shade in here. Not one dud shimmer. All the shimmers perform beautifully. They're much more multi-dimensional on the eyes than they are in the pan or swatched. This is a beautiful palette. These like highlighter shades over here are some of the most pigmented shimmers on the inner corners I've ever used from ColourPop. The mattes are amazing, and yeah, I would be picking this up because the only reason why I would be picking it up is because I read because of Harry Potter growing up. Like, I didn't want to read these books when they came out. Like, I was not a reader because I didn't know I had ADD until, like, I think a couple years after I started reading Harry Potter. And then it got me to start reading books. So that's why it's special to me. Okay, 2 more palettes and then I can stop dying. So, yeah. Okay, the next one is a Nomad palette, and this is the Nomad Verona palette. This is the Verona Amor y Morte palette. And I love this palette packaging-wise, and once I saw the color story and the packaging of this palette and the theming that it was Romeo and Juliet, originally I said when I first saw the palette color story, like when they were teasing it, I was like, I don't know if I need this. And then when they actually revealed the full color story, I was like, I have to get this. And my decision would not change even if it was coming out now. I did pick up their most recent palette as well. I have become such a lover of Nomad that they actually are my most purchased eyeshadow palette brand. Besides Odin's Eye and ColourPop, I now own 5 Nomad palettes. I absolutely love this color story. I love that there's basically 2 color stories in one. And you get 18 beautiful shades. The shimmers are beautiful. The mattes blend out like a dream. I would 100% be picking this palette up as well because I absolutely love the theming. I loved Italy when I went to Italy, and when they come out with their Europe releases, I now have 3 European releases that they released. I have the Feet de Provence palette, which is France. I have this one, which is Italy, and I have the newest, I did pick up the newest one, which is the Royal Europe palette. And they're all stunning. I love Nomad's theming. I love their color stories. And it's really, really hard for me to say no to Nomad now. No pun intended. Sorry. Oh my God. So yes, I would 100% be picking this up. Because once I saw this packaging, they teased the packaging before they showed the color story. And I was like, as soon as I saw this packaging, I was like, that's mine. I was like, this is still my favorite Nomad packaging they've ever done. I love like this reflective like cover. It might be a little bit annoying that it opens up the way that it does, but I love it. Like, I don't mind it at all. I think it's beautiful. So yes, I would be 100% be picking this up. And then last but not least is actually a palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today, and that is the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. Now, I didn't pick this palette up initially when it first released, but I did pick it up on the last restock that they had, I think before Christmas. And then, of course, they did like a 1 or 2 day sale right after I picked this palette up. But I did use a discount code to get 15% off. So I didn't pay full price. And I think the Boxing Day sale was 20% instead of 15%. So I basically missed out on saving like a few more dollars, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But honestly, if this palette was coming out now, I would be 100% be picking this palette up. This was my first new brand to me in 2023, and I am so happy that I tried Glaminatrix. I was eyeing this palette for a while anyway, and I have used this palette a ton since I've gotten it. I just want to reach for this palette over and over and over again because the shimmers are so ridiculously stunning, and it's so easy to do a look because the mattes are such a good formula as well. And I was super curious about this brand, and I kept on seeing like the shimmers swatched and how blinding they were on Instagram that I'm like, I need to try this brand. And a few of my YouTube girls were pushing me to try this brand, and they were like, you won't be disappointed, Caitlin. And when I told them that I got it, they were so excited that I was able to try it. I absolutely love this palette. The shimmers are so intense and blinding. I'm wearing just a few of the shades today. I'm wearing Simplicity in the crease. Then I darkened up the crease more with Barely There. And then I used Naturally on the outer corners. And then I used Naked Eye on the lid and just popped New Nude on the inner corners. And that's it. And that's my look today. But this palette is just so good. And I would 100% be picking this palette up. So I didn't say no to any of these palettes because they're all such good palettes. So I'm not going to go over them again because I would be saying yes to pretty much all of them. So I guess I failed this round. But again, they're in my palettes for a reason. They're in my collection for a reason. Some of these are my most used palettes in my collection. They're just all great palettes. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Let me know if you guys would be picking up any of these palettes or if you guys own any of these palettes. I would love to know. And I hope y'all have a great day. Did I already say subscribe and everything? Subscribe, like, share with your friends, whatever. And yeah, bye. Sorry, I just burped. Bye.